on his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Listener discretion is advised. The show contains graphic language and depictions of violence. It may not be suitable for all audiences.
We say fuck a lot.
Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders. I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
We are a few days late, Dylan. A day late and $1 short. Story of my life.
Oh my gosh. We've not had any luck lately.
Well, if you follow us on the gram, then you probably know what's up. Unfortunately, I had a kidney stone and had to be hospitalized on Sunday.
Yeah, she blew out her kidney.
For real. I mean, it's a big-ass stone. I still don't have it removed yet. I'll have to have surgery in a couple of weeks. But at least right now they've taken some steps to alleviate the pain and this horrible infection. I guess they really want to know about that, right? I was really sick.
Well, I should have brought the equipment up there like someone suggested and made you record anyway.
Yeah, well, that's true. You should have next time.
Yeah, some professional you are.
So not only do I have this kidney stone, but then today you find out you're sick as well.
Yeah, I have COVID.
You've got COVID. Yeah.
19.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I was just not been feeling good at all the last couple of days, running around for you up there in the hospital and such. And just couldn't get it together. And today you were like, you're going to get a test because I think you're sick.
You're positive. I'm negative, but we both know that that's probably not right because you're in my face all the time. So thanks for breathing your diseases on me, Dylan.
Oh, okay. You're welcome for that.
Yeah.
Yes, it will be incubated in your body.
But I'm happy that we are finally able to record. I know we both have been excited about this case, and we don't want to leave you guys hanging. But first, let's thank our brand new patrons, Lynette, Stephanie, Blythe, Lane, Jenny, and Bethany.
Yes, thank you and welcome aboard, and thank you for your support.
They are sponsoring today's episode. And if you would like to be a patron, you're going to get bonus content, ad-free episodes, an invite to our Discord chat. We have a lot of fun. It's www.patreon.com/mountainmurderspodcast.
I must say, I've been having a blast with our Discord family.
They are family.
Yeah, they are really fun, and we talk about just whatever, everyday life, as well as true crime. And everyone that's on there right now,
They're my favorite people.
they're so awesome. And
yeah, they really kept me going while I was hospitalized. I was so bored, and they had limited visitation. So I was there for extended hours alone, and they kept me company, and I appreciate that. Stephanie,
Yes.
Karen, Phyllis.
yes, and Jenny.
Jenny, yeah.
And we have some new ones that just hit there.
Candace just joined us.
I
Hey,
got-
girl, hey.
I got a chance to talk to her.
Yeah, it'll be really fun if you join us on Discord. Dylan, are you ready to get into this true crime case?
Now, this is a great case, and I'm really excited to be talking about it, and I just can't wait, because this is just an insane tale.
It's one of those cases that just encompasses every aspect of crime you can imagine, it seems.
Yes, you're talking full-on criminal gangs of sorts, and yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there.
And it surprises me that it's such a little-known story.
Well, let's dive right in with 2 feet.
When the term crime family pops up, what comes to mind?
Well, I think mob, organized crime.
An organized crime syndicate associated with the mafia, exactly. You might think Gambino or the Lucchese families, but for several decades, a ruthless gang of brothers bearing the last name Johnston became notorious in Pennsylvania. Extremely organized, ruthless, and not afraid of law enforcement, the Johnston Gang ruled a tri-state area of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Delaware for 2 decades.
Wow, that's a long time.
To really understand the Johnston family gang, we need to first discuss Ma Johnston. Ma, meatloaf, now!
Ma Johnson?
Yeah.
Okay.
So now Ma's real name was Louise Price, And she grew up on a North Carolina farm very close to Mountain City, Tennessee. Remember Mountain City popped up when we discussed that Facebook catfish murder?
Yeah, okay. I knew I'd heard that somewhere.
Exactly. So during the Depression, Louise left a broken marriage with her 2 children, making her way to Philadelphia in search of a better life. In the 1930s, Louise met a man named Passmore Johnston. He was a Quaker born in Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. Passmore was 40 years her senior.
40?
40 years older than her, yes.
Man, talk about a May-December relationship.
Yeah.
Times 3.
Yeah. He was a farmer, and the couple settled in Chester County, Pennsylvania. By the way, I really love your snotty nose. Keep making those sounds at us.
Yeah, I'm trying. Oh, you can hear that?
I can totally hear it. And I
Okay.
know our listeners can hear it too, so we appreciate that, Dylan.
Well, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's real life right now.
Now you guys need to go get your ears tested for COVID. Dylan's spreading it through the microphone.
It's real life.
Louise would add 8 more children to her family. There was Bill, Mary, the eldest, Bruce. Then there was David, Norman, Jack, Pete, Manuel, Joe, and Sandra.
Wow.
That's a lot of kids.
It's a big fam.
And as I said, Bill and Mary were the eldest. And then with Passmore, she had Bruce, David, Norman, Jack, Pete, Manuel. And then Joe and Sandra, it appears she had with a 3rd gentleman. Now, Bruce Johnston was born in 1939, and he would eventually become the leader of the gang. He would be joined by his brothers, David, born in 1948, and Norman, who was born in 1950. Bruce attended high school in Unionville, but dropped out in 7th grade. So I don't know if that's technically considered high school.
No, that's like middle school, right?
Yeah.
Junior high, as they called it when I was a chap.
Like a lot of poor farm families, the children were expected to work from dawn till dusk on the family farm. The family wasn't considered poor like per se. They were hardworking, and the children always had a roof over their heads and food in their bellies. I mean, they were probably more like middle class.
So just salt of the earth working folk.
Yeah. Louise
Okay.
raised her children in the Baptist church, so they were quite active in church when the boys were young. Now, later, Louise would claim that her sons had no respect for her. They got no respect for me, Dylan. No respect at all. She's like Rodney Dangerfield. She can't get no respect. Now, she probably doesn't have that accent, but I'm just adding it in there for effect.
You do that good.
Yeah, she gets no damn respect. I get that. When you have kids, you get no damn respect. Am I right?
Well, it's true. These kids nowadays, I'd be like, you want me to reach over and mush your little mouth?
You don't do that.
Well, yeah, but
behind their back, she whispered, "Fuck them kids."
I know you can't do that. But sometimes I think that's what they're trying to get you to do.
Well, that's why you just whisper behind their back and be like, "Fuck those kids," and then we just shit talk them when they're not around.
No, that's when we tell them we're going to Home Depot and we go out and eat some really good food without them.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Shh, they may be listening. So the kids have no respect for her, but she stood by them because they were her sons. So many thought Louise was an enabler who often benefited from her son's criminal activities. 3 years after Bruce dropped out of school, he met and married a 15-year-old girl named Jenny Steffi. She was from Elkton, Maryland. Bruce tried to make a living working as a groundskeeper on the DuPont estate, but soon realized being a working stiff wasn't going to afford him the type of lifestyle that he wanted. He was arrested in the late 1950s for stealing $5 in gasoline, which was more a crime of necessity, really, than anything. Bruce Johnston started breaking into stores, doing these little small break-ins. He would siphon gas from tractors. So, petty crimes.
So he's just trying to keep some gas in the car to get back and forth to work, stuff like that, get a little food here and there.
Yeah, but then he realized that, hey, this is a way to get a little extra cash. He served time in prison. It was mostly like a juvenile detention center in the 1950s. But then later, he would have 2 stints in, actual state prison in 1960 and again in 1966.
Well, that's not a good start when you're in and out of juvie, right?
No, not at all. When Johnston was released from prison, he and 2 of his brothers, David and Norman, set up a criminal enterprise around Chester County, Pennsylvania. Over the course of the 1960s, law enforcement went from considering the Johnstons just a bunch of hillbilly burglars Ridge runners, they called them. Have you heard that term before?
Yeah, I've heard that term.
Do you know what it means?
Well, I've heard it used in reference to moonshiners.
And
you know, I guess, actually, I think it was even referenced during maybe the Revolutionary War or something. Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I've always heard it like associated with moonshiners or, exactly this, like sort of hillbilly criminals.
Well, these guys will literally take off through the woods, like across the hill and over the mountain.
So law enforcement just considered them a bunch of bumpkins committing petty thefts. However, the Johnstons were far more sophisticated than law enforcement could imagine. The Johnston Gang would commit as many as 300 thefts, not including hundreds of stolen cars and assaults.
Damn, that's a lot of stealing.
From cigarettes to antiques, the brothers managed to see dollar signs everywhere they looked.
Well, and having your local law enforcement not really kind of take you serious is an advantage to your criminal gang.
A 1960s incident saw the theft of brand new red carpet from a township building. Interestingly enough, Ma Johnston had brand new wall-to-wall red carpet in her home.
At first I was like, why the hell did they take the carpet? But I guess Ma Johnson needed some new rugs.
Now, she claimed someone had just left it by the door.
Yeah.
Though Ma Johnston seemed like an innocent old lady, grandmotherly type, others called her a real piece of work. A photo exists of her holding guns in each hand, along with wads of $100 bills. So Ma was the original, like she's the OG.
Oh, so it's kind of the goofy shit people do nowadays on Instagram and such.
Yeah.
With all the money and the guns.
Dollar bills, y'all.
Yeah, so Ma Johnson was doing this back in the day.
Yeah, she was like an old thug.
You know, it's funny because we've had this come up more than once in cases we've covered, like in Biloxi and the State Line Mafia and stuff. You had that older woman who was basically...
I believe her name was Louise as well.
Yeah, she was running shit, and she was ruthless. And I'm sure if you came across her, you'd be like, what's this old lady going to do? And she preferred the ball peen hammer, didn't she?
Yeah, she would fucking hammer the shit out of somebody's brain.
Oh, my God.
Well, in the late 1960s, the Johnstons first began stealing automobiles, including Corvettes. So a Corvette was like the car they wanted to steal.
Well, yeah, back then, that was the most premier sports car in America, all right? The 60s.
That was a fucking good-looking car back then.
Yeah, in the late 50s, early 60s.
I get a lady boner just thinking about one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Ooh.
Those 60s style. Even like into the 70s, like the Stingrays.
Oh, dude.
Today's Corvettes, they don't do it for me.
We saw one the other day. They're trying to look like these supercars, like Ferraris and such.
Oh, like a Batmobile?
Yeah, and they've lost all their character.
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan of the car today. So Bruce began using his brother-in-law Roy Meyer's farm to hide stolen items. When they created a chop shop in Roy's barn, that's where they would dismantle all of the cars. The Johnstons really took to stealing Corvettes, but sometimes they'd get a nice truck. Over 200 Corvettes were chopped in Roy's barn.
Damn, that's a lot. That's like Corvettes from a tri-state area, right?
He was paid a fee of $300 per car.
Which was a substantial sum back in the 60s.
The gang had stripping a car down to a science, Dylan. It would take about 30 minutes to take a whole front end off a Corvette.
So it's like when you see that chop shop, the cliche chop shop in the movies when they're just ripping the car apart all fast and such. And they were really doing it.
Yeah, the parts were sold at Corvette World and through a fence named Franny Matherly. What a name.
Oh, so they had a connection. Someone was actually buying the parts straight out.
Yep, Corvette World, which I'm assuming was like a big manufacturer or parts dealership.
At a steep discount.
And then they had a fence named Franny Matherly who would sell the other parts for them. The gang would earn between $1,200 to $1,500 per Corvette, like on the various parts they sold off the car. And in 1960s money, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at.
So you're looking what, around 15 grand every 10 cars?
Yeah, I believed I looked it up, and I think it was about $13,000 in today's money, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, so but I'm saying you said that it was over 300 cars were chopped in his barn, right?
Oh, yeah. So
you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Wow.
Now, the gang planned burglaries, and I'm not just saying like they planned, hey, we're going to go rob this place. They had logistics. I mean, they went into deep planning at like the next level on this stuff. They'd have walkie-talkies to communicate throughout the burglary. They hit homes and businesses in Arkansas, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, and New York.
Well, yeah, this is a full-on crew, as they call them, right?
This is a crew.
This is a crew. You have guys who are good at one thing or the other, and that's
safe cracking,
yeah,
dismantling alarm systems.
A driver.
Yep, they had drivers.
Yeah.
They had it all planned out.
So they would meticulously plan these things, and that's why they were able to do so many.
In and out in just minutes.
Right.
Stealing thousands of dollars in items and merchandise. The vehicle thefts were equally as planned out. The Johnstons obtained key numbers from GM vehicles. David Johnston had a key machine he had taken from this car dealership so they could produce their own keys to the cars they stole.
Wow.
In 1971, one of the gang members was able to pry open the door to the Dutch Wonderland theme park. Armed with walkie-talkies, crowbars, hammers, blowtorches, and a rope, the gang managed to steal $33,000 in loot from this theme park.
Damn, that's interesting. They must have went after all the money in the various parts of the park, you reckon?
Well, that, and they stole different like tools and
they would take equipment,
everything.
Yeah.
Anything they could get their hands on.
If they knew
Probably stole a goddamn icy machine for all we know.
If they knew they could get it, if someone who would take it off their hands and fence it for them, they took it.
Now, I have to say, if I was a thief and I went to a theme park, the one thing that I would totally steal if I could would be a slush puppy machine.
You mean like the big one, not the little cheesy one you can order for home?
Well, no, I'm talking like the slush puppy, the big one that you get in like the convenience store, because I fucking love slush puppies.
Oh my God.
When I was a kid, there was like a blue, I think it was like blue raspberry.
You know what?
That was my jam.
I did the suicide.
I loved that. You would just do the whole, like all the flavors?
A little shot of all of it. And
I would do that sometimes.
And then my belly would hurt, but then my mom would be like, why did you do that? But then I'd do it again. And then I just got to where I wouldn't say my belly was hurting because she's like, I'm not going to get you that anymore.
And there's something about like the little chunks of ice that come in the slush puppy. It's so delicious. Now I feel like we should go find a slush puppy.
I was going to say, is there one near us?
I don't know.
Okay.
I really want one though. An incident in 1972 seemed to catapult the Johnston Gang into further criminal activity. So Bill Davis and Dick Posey were police officers who worked out of the Kennett Square police station. The pair had been focusing on these early crimes that the Johnstons were committing, and they were kind of the first police officers to really take notice and see that, like, wait a minute, there's more going on here than just some petty little shit.
Yeah, these guys are serious, and they're wreaking havoc all over the place.
One night, somebody ambushed the men as they were walking into the police station, gunning them down. The already small police department was rocked. An investigation into the double murders focused on one of the gang members, a man named Ansel Ham. Ham used a Belgian .308 rifle to kill the officers, which was found at his home. He was eventually arrested and convicted on both murders. He was given a life sentence. But this did little to deter the Johnstons, who saw the murders as sending a message. No one is out of our reach.
Man, that guy has such a great criminal name.
Ansel Ham.
Yeah, no.
Right? That is a great name.
I don't think my name would play that well in the criminal organization.
Well, in this small police station that's in Chester County, I mean, they have very few officers on duty, typically like one or two officers at a shift.
Well, yeah, and 2 are killed.
And 2 get killed. So, what do you think? Local cops are not going to want to touch the Johnstons.
Yeah, there likely is definitely 10 or less cops, including the sheriff, right?
Oh, definitely.
So, yeah, you just had at least a fifth or fourth of your force killed, ambushed and killed. Then you may see them like, well, I don't really want to mess with those guys, unless I have to.
Many believe that Bruce and David were involved in the double homicide, but there just wasn't enough evidence to connect them or charge them. Now, typically law enforcement agencies don't like working together. We've seen this time and time again in the true crime cases that we've covered.
Yeah, it's true. Supposedly that got a little bit better after 9/11 and all that, but all they did was create another huge bloated department. And I think even to this day, maybe it's a little bit better nowadays. It seems to be
a lot of departments, they'll fight over jurisdiction.
Right. Credit.
Kind of these issues come up. They don't want to work together.
Yeah, and they don't want to give up
Give each other the cold shoulder.
Whoever solves it, or they don't want someone else to, make them look bad, I guess.
They don't want to trade evidence, information, all of that. But after the murders of these two police officers, state and federal investigators began a long-term joint effort to take down the crime family. The Johnstons' primary targets included the stealing of International Harvester and John Deere tractors. By 1973, the crime spree had really kicked into high gear.
Yeah, so they live in farm country,
They
right?
live in farm country.
And these are easy to get rid of, and it's a highly valuable asset that is on wheels. It's no different than the Corvettes.
It's a much sought-after item.
And people could buy these.
Everybody needs a tractor.
Yeah, and people could
Everybody has a tractor.
buy these stolen tractors, get it out on their huge farm, and then no one even know they have a stolen tractor. So there's definitely a market for it. Even they may have parted them out as well, but yeah, they're easy to get rid of, make a lot of money.
Around 1974, tractors were being hijacked across the tri-state area. A $4,000 tractor would be stolen, then sold to big horse farms in the area. The engine numbers on the stolen tractors were being cross-referenced by a businessman named Jim Mark, who was a fence. And he provided legit paperwork on these tractors.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting how you said he would do that.
Well, no one was verifying warranty records on the tractors, so he was using like the real serial numbers from legit sales and was able to forge this paperwork. And the scam worked for a while until Mark was finally busted. And he began helping police. And when he did, guess what happened?
He got killed.
Well, they done burned down his family barn.
Oh, shit, not his barn.
No, and we all know barn burning, like if you live on a farm or you live in a farm community, that's like one of the worst things you could do to a person is burn their barn.
Well, they got all their equipment there, subject to have animals in there. I mean, that's
a big fucking deal.
It's a big deal.
It makes me think of one of my all-time favorite films starring Mr. Gorgeous Paul Newman, The Long Hot Summer. And his character, Ben Quick, has a reputation for being a barn burner.
Ooh.
And they'll be like, you barn burner. And they live in Mississippi. They have like the really great southern accent. And we'll be yelling at him, you barn burner.
So, yeah, it sounded like he would access the warranty information and take that real information and create like bills of sale and things like that. And so there's this paper trail that, upon
seems
just
very valid.
A cursory glance or something, you could be like, hey, I have all of my paperwork. So that's pretty ingenious.
One farmer who reported the Johnstons found dynamite under his truck seat after being warned about snitches.
Well, guys, we know what snitches get.
Stitches?
Stitches in the ditches. I just added that last part, but I mean, I think it goes together.
And then they be calling you a bitches.
Oh.
And they won't let you use their truck hitches.
Stop. I'm going to stop you right there. You go outside and sit until I come and get you.
That makes me sad.
Oh, my God. What is wrong with you?
Well, I probably have a fever right now.
Yeah.
Now, the cardinal, see, I will get that out eventually. The cardinal rule of the Johnston Gang was never talk to law enforcement. Ever.
Well, and I think that's true with most criminal organizations because you can bring everyone down. If you're on the inside, you know all the information, you know where all the bodies might literally be. So, yeah, I mean, as soon as one person squeals, it could bring the whole house of cards down.
They take it to the next level. I mean, they really elevate this idea of don't fucking talk. And we will see as we get further into the story, they're vicious. So one scam the Johnstons would put into play repeatedly was selling stolen tractors to a farmer. Then they would turn around and steal the tractor back.
See, that might be a step too far because now you got the farmer knows he bought a stolen tractor from you in the first place. and then you done stole it back.
Yeah, but it's genius.
But then what can he do? Because who can he report it to? Because he bought the fucking stolen tractor in the first place.
Exactly. Knowing the farm equipment was hot, the farmer couldn't go to law enforcement. And the Johnstons would then turn around and resell the tractor back to the same farmer.
I'll be
Sell
like,
it to him twice.
I'll be like, hold up, dude. Do I get to keep it this time? I mean, for real, because now I've done spent like regular tractor prices.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So are you going to let me keep it this time? I need some assurances.
The skilled thieves surprised many. Now, at one point, David Johnston broke into a vending machine company with an expensive security system. And it included infrarays and motion detectors. It was like state of the art for the time.
So it's like he defeated the entire system.
He belayed like himself down, you know, with all these ropes and wires and shit into this business from the ceiling, and it was like something out of Mission Impossible.
I was about to say, it's like little Tom Cruise.
Yeah, no, he's totally like a little Tom Cruise. Of course, if he was a little Tom Cruise, is he like 2 feet tall? Because Tom Cruise is already pretty little.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, another hit that worked for the Johnsons came in 1974 when they stole an entire tractor trailer from Acme, which was a company out of Oxford, Pennsylvania, and it was loaded with groceries. So the Johnsons were also skilled shoplifters, and at one point they took an entire rack of fur coats. They were good at safe cracking, locksmithing, and arson. So they steal this entire truckload of groceries, and they're like supplying their houses, their friends' houses, selling off all these groceries.
My goodness. These guys do it all.
They do it all. Imagine just showing up and they're like, take some of them pork chops.
Like, is that your semi-truck out front that says Acme on it?
Okay, so I have kind of a funny story. Can I tell you the story really quickly?
Is it about somebody stealing groceries?
Yeah, it's about my Uncle Jeff. Well, okay. You know, you've met my Uncle Jeff.
Yo.
No, he's my uncle by marriage. They're actually divorced now, but I still call him my Uncle Jeff. His nickname is actually, I call him Red Lizard. It's a long story.
That's a good nickname.
Okay, so he's always been into some like shady shit, which is funny because my aunt is like the most wholesome, like kind, clean, squeaky clean person, like would never harm a fly, commit a crime kind of person.
Right.
But her husband's like, or ex-husband, he's just like a big piece of shit, but he's a very likable piece of shit.
Like if she found a wallet full of money, she'd return it.
Yeah.
She'd find the owner.
And then she would probably give them $20 for their trouble extra.
Yeah, I'd be like, oh, I knew you was worried about your money being gone.
So my aunt told me the story a couple of times. So she said when she was married to my uncle, and this was like way back in the day, like in the 80s, and they were young. They were like in their early 20s, that these women would just come to her house and be like, hey, you guys want to buy some meat? And would like pop the trunk open and would have just like steaks and pork chops. And it was food that they had like shoplifted from the grocery store.
Yeah.
And would be like, yeah, we'll sell you those ribeyes for like $3.
Shit, yeah, dude.
Shit like that.
I wish somebody'd bring some trunk meat by here.
My aunt was like, oh my gosh. Like she was horrified. She's like, I'm not trying to buy some trunk meat. And of course her husband's like, load up the freezer.
Shit, yeah, dude. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not going to eat trunk meat.
You're not. What if it's still cold?
I don't feel like that's a good idea.
I just think it's going to be bad karma, so I'm not going to get the stuff. But, you know, it's like those weird people in the little Ford Rangers with like the generator and the freezer in the back.
Yeah.
And they would come by and like do the high pressure sales to buy their shitty, tiny ribeyes that are in like plastic wrap.
And they taste like a hockey puck.
And they taste horrible.
Yep.
And like you keep telling them, no, you don't want it. And they start out sky high.
They basically like bring them into your house and then like refuse to leave until you pay them.
Yeah. And they're like, at first it's like $400 or $500. And you're like, yeah, I know. But before they leave, like an hour later, because you've been trying to get them to leave,
$30.
They're down to like $70.
Well, I'm just imagining like, who thought of going into a store, shoplifting meat, and then driving around to like various people's houses, like knocking on the door, hey, you guys want to buy some meat? I got a good deal on ground turkey out here.
Man, can I say another thing? I always talk about signs of a rich people moves or rich people house right quick. The Swan truck. If I saw the Swan truck come to your house back in the day especially, I thought you were rich.
But that meat was not good.
Not the Swan. No, Swan is good.
I've had it. I don't like it.
You don't like it?
But I'm a snob about it.
You don't like any of it?
No.
You don't like none of their meals? Or nothing?
No.
Some was pretty good.
No.
Okay, back to the story.
This is coming from a man who's like, Denny Moore beef stew is amazing. So I don't to trust your palate.
No, you've never had any more beef stew. Thank you very much.
And I probably won't.
I'm getting a can.
Well, eat it.
Look.
Eat it, bitch. Put it all up in your fucking face.
We're in a fever dream right now. We're way off track.
I know. I just wanted to share the trunk meat story with our listeners.
Hey,
because it's so random.
You know what?
Weird.
If I was in hard times and barely making it, and the shit was not room temperature, I might consider some trunk meat.
Well, hey, when you know shitbird people, you're going to get some shitbird trunk meat, okay?
It's true. There ain't nothing wrong with that meat.
Often arrests were made, but convictions were scarce. The Johnstons could afford to pay these high-profile lawyers, like out of Philadelphia, big city attorneys, intimidate witnesses, and then they would pay off others. So not only were barns burned, but dynamite was often left in mailboxes. People in the community were downright afraid of this gang.
Who's just got dynamite laying around?
I don't know.
Well, it's like old prospectors, it's like old wooden box with a sweat on the outside of it.
Yeah, like where do you even get it? Can you buy it? Is it legal?
They probably stole it off like construction sites and such.
That's probably true.
Yup.
In 1975, the Johnstons broke into Meadia Heights Country Club, which is in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. With skills in disarming security systems, they were able to drill holes through the wall of the shop and break the system. They used dynamite on the safe. They stole golf equipment and about $15,000 in cash. It's like a really big score in that area.
Yeah, these guys don't care. They'll just blow the damn safe up.
The Johnstons had no official jobs, but they lived large. The brothers flashed a lot of cash, dining out in restaurants. They lived in nice houses, and they spent a lot of time at the track gambling. The men always drove luxury vehicles like new Cadillacs or Thunderbirds.
Yeah, well, I think it was even easier back then to just throw cash around. You know what I mean?
Sometimes they'd have a brand new, like, big flashy truck. It seemed the more money the Johnstons had, the more farm equipment went missing in Chester County.
Well, yeah, there's a direct correlation.
Now, in 1976, a woman named Janet Gazzaro and her husband Frank were convicted of bribing a juror in Chester County. Bruce was accused of stealing a tractor. Janet and Frank had received over $83,000 worth of stolen rugs, furs, jewelry. Janet admitted that Bruce had given her 3 tractors. She kept 2, and she gave 1 to a juror.
Damn it, Janet.
So it worked because Bruce, along with these accomplices, his brother Norman and Ron Myers, they were all acquitted of the theft charges.
So she straight up bribed their way out of it.
Yeah, so the charges are dropped against them, but then she turns around, gets charged with bribing a juror.
It doesn't seem like the charges being dropped would stand.
Right?
But I guess that's the way the system's built.
While investigating the tractor theft, police were gathering information about the burglary ring. A man named Gary Hawk was asked to testify. Hawk had bought a piece of stolen farm equipment from the gang, having no idea that it was stolen. Now, before the hearing, he received a phone call from an anonymous person telling him not to testify. The caller then told him if he didn't take the suggestion seriously, he could go check under the seat of his truck. And there Hawk found dynamite that wasn't hooked up. He didn't testify about the stolen equipment, later admitting he was deathly afraid of the Johnstons.
Well, I mean, that would scare the shit out of anybody, right? I mean, that's a pretty good intimidation tactic.
In April of 1977, several gang members stole cigarettes and transported them across state lines. The amount was around $21,000 worth of stolen tobacco products.
Which is a pretty big deal.
It was 1 month later, in May of 1977, that the gang broke into Longwood Gardens and managed to steal about $28,000 worth of items. Bruce Sr. had a son named Bruce Jr.
See, now so you've went through their criminal endeavors.
Yes.
Which have been going on for years and years and years, right?
Yeah.
And they're living the high life. And now, this is what I think is so interesting about this case. It gets off into a whole nother element, a whole nother kind of part of the story.
Yeah. So he has a son named Bruce Jr. Now, it seems that Bruce Sr. didn't really have a whole lot to do with the boy until he was a teenager. He was in prison when the boy was young, neglectful. He's out running around.
Yeah, and it seems like maybe Bruce Jr.'s mom is kind of straight laced, and maybe this her bad.
Yeah, I mean, this was the girl he married when he was 15. They had the son together. She just seems like a normal person.
Yeah, and I think
hardworking, just trying to make ends meet.
I think Senior pops in and out, throws a little money at her, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
Well, Bruce Jr. wanted to get into the family business, so he recruited some of his friends to help with these tractor thefts. The gang of teenagers became known as the Kitty Gang.
Well, I mean, as a young person, I guess anyone could end up in. You see someone making cash. It's what happens in the inner cities and stuff with the drug dealers and such. You see the fast, loose cash that seems to come easy, and I guess it's tempting to kind of go that route.
Let's go ahead, pause, Dylan, and take a quick break, and we'll be right back. And we're back. Dylan, you needed that break.
You think so?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, thanks.
It consisted of Bruce Jr., his half-brother, Jimmy Johnston, brothers Wayne and James Sampson, and a guy named Dwayne Lincoln. Often the Johnston Gang would drive around in a truck, dropping the young men off in a field. The Kitty Gang would then, sneak up through the cornfield. They would find the tractor, and they would either steal it by pushing the tractor, down to the main road so it could be loaded up on a truck, or they would drive it down to the area where the truck waited.
So they're just using the shit out of these kids.
Yep. As the Johnstons came under increased pressure and surveillance from police due to the high-profile crimes, they began to worry about loose ties. Bruce Jr. had begun a relationship with a 15-year-old girl named Robin Marie Miller. Bruce was 19, and he seemingly fell head over heels for this 15-year-old girl.
Well, that's kind of gross.
I mean, he's really super in love with her.
19 and 15 is it's too big a split, right?
Well, I agree, but this is a different time.
Well, that's true.
I think it was probably a little bit more acceptable. I mean, we're talking the late 70s.
I still think it's a little, I don't know.
I agree that it's gross, but I think people just had more lenient ideas about statutory rape back then. And I'm not saying that it's okay. I'm just saying I think attitudes were a little different back then.
Well, if we're going to call it that.
Well, it is.
That's what it is.
That's what we're going to call it. Well, her mother, Linda, was not at all a fan of Bruce because he was much older than her daughter and because of his family's reputation. Bruce Jr. and Robin ran away together several times. And when Linda realized the opposition was futile, she finally relented, allowing Bruce Jr. to stay at their home.
Now, me and you actually discussed that very thing the other day when we were talking.
About this case, yeah.
Yeah, that sometimes parents do, and I think this even happens nowadays. You do fight and try to make your kid do right, and sometimes you're just you're defeated, and you just don't think that you're going to be able to make them do exactly what you want. And so, in some instances, that's how people are just well, I'll just let them. At least they're here, and I have my eyes on them.
Exactly. Well, I've always been, I guess maybe I shouldn't have been, but have been a little judgmental at parents who allow their teenagers to have a boyfriend or girlfriend sleep over.
Right.
And these are 16-year-old kids, or parents who are well, I'm going to let them drink at home or smoke pot at home because at least I know what they're doing. And I've always been fuck no, that's never going to happen in my house. And I still kind of feel that way. But I guess I am more understanding that some parents get to a point where their kids are running away or they're doing all these bad things and they just get tired and just are fine, fuck it.
Well, and
they're stay here because I don't want you running away.
Yeah.
It's a really tough position for parents.
It is tough, and I've heard some of those cases like that, and the ages are way you're talking a 20-year-old and a 14 or 15-year-old.
That's not going to happen.
That's way too much. But in spirit of what you're saying, then I think people are just scared at a certain point that their child will just run away and never come back or get killed or abused or exploited,
sex trafficked, or something. Exactly.
So it can be tough. Right?
Yeah, I mean, as much as I'm no, I'm not going to allow that stuff. I guess you can just never say never.
Well, no, I tell you,
We
when,
just don't know what's going to come
when
down the
kids
line.
start rebelling and making adult mistakes and stuff, it can be scary.
Yeah. I mean, I really hope that I never have to make that decision because I'm still going to be like, no, I'm pretty tough about certain things.
Ooh,
Yeah.
baby.
Well, you know I am.
Yeah, spank my ass.
You know I'm a authoritarian figure in this household.
Baby.
I'm an authority figure. You respect my authority.
Make me get on all fours.
But yeah, so Linda just wasn't really digging this situation, but she just kind of felt like her hands were tied. She didn't have a whole lot she could do. So in the summer of 1978, Bruce Jr. was arrested for stealing a truck. And while he was in jail, he received a letter from his girlfriend, Robin. Now, she said that Bruce Sr., his father, and a gang associate had offered to drive her to see Bruce Jr. in jail.
Yes.
So she's 15. She doesn't have a car, doesn't have a license. She has no way to see her boyfriend. She's absolutely like over the moon in love with this guy. Dying to see him in jail. Can't live without him.
So Bruce Jr. done got caught up.
Yeah. So, of course, when, Bruce's dad offers her a ride, she's like, absolutely, I really want to go see him. So on the drive, the men ply her with whiskey until she is drunk.
A 15-year-old.
Yeah. Then the two men sexually assault her in a motel room. Bruce Jr., who would do anything to be with Robin, was incensed. And that's an understatement. The rape sent him over the edge.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I guess his dad, maybe they're just bad people, obviously.
Yeah, they are.
But I don't know what was to be gained from this because if anything, you're going to piss him off. And so if he's not already talking to authorities about everything you're doing or what he knows, now he's definitely going to.
Well, my theory about this situation is that Bruce Sr. is just a creep.
So, yeah.
He preys on young girls.
He had an opportunity.
All of his girlfriends, his women he was having an affair with, he would go after much younger women. Like, that was just a thing. He preyed on teenage girls. He was just a fucking creep. Slimeball. I think that was part of it. I think, too, he saw this as a way to have power over his son or to show him, like, I'm in fucking charge here. I can have what you have.
Yeah, I guess.
And then third, Bruce Sr. had a real problem with his son's relationship with this girl and felt it was too serious and that she knew too much and didn't want them to be together. So I think that this rape was a way for him to create like a wedge between them. Like he thought she would be like, I'm in over my head, break up with Bruce Jr. But if anything, it just made her run to Bruce Jr.
Right, because
made their bond stronger.
Bruce Jr. had been talking about, we want to get out of here. We want to leave this area together and start over somewhere else.
Yeah, they had kind of talked about making plans for their future and being together. So yeah, I mean, that's just my theory on the rape.
Well, yeah, I guess Bruce Sr. is just a piece of shit.
Yeah, I think he's just a piece of shit, Dylan. While in county jail, the joint federal and state investigative team had approached him about his father's gang activity. So in mid-August of 1978, after hearing from Robin, Bruce Jr. agreed to cooperate. He would testify before a grand jury in Philadelphia in exchange for immunity so he could be with the girl he loved. On August 17th of 1978, Bruce Jr. was brought before a judge to testify. Law enforcement believed his life was in danger, so they transferred him from the Chester County Jail to the Lancaster County Detention Center to serve his probation violation. Then he was released. He was offered entry into the witness protection program, but he refused because he thought he'd be stuck in a motel with police officers, and he wanted to be able to smoke marijuana.
Oh.
So I understand that.
Oh.
He wasn't willing to give up the pot, Dylan. So when Bruce Jr. was released from jail, he went to live at the Miller Farm located in South Chester County. Now, as soon as Bruce Jr. was released, his father began calling the Miller home repeatedly, almost to the point of harassment. Asking to speak to his son. Is my son there? Can I speak to Bruce Jr.? Is he around? Do you know where he is?
Hey, you raped my 15-year-old girlfriend. Don't really want to chat right now, bud.
Bruce Sr. offered his son $12,000 if he wouldn't testify against him.
Again, I wish you hadn't raped my 15-year-old girlfriend, Dad.
Now, the 4 Kitty gang members were served with subpoenas to appear before the grand jury during this time. All 4 young men vanished. Investigators were trying to locate them, believing that Bruce Sr. had sent them into hiding. On Wednesday, August 30th of 1978, Bruce Jr.'s yellow Volkswagen Rabbit pulled down a driveway surrounded by cornfields that led to the Miller farmhouse. He and Robin had spent the day at Hershey Park, which is about a 60-mile trip from Chester County. Robin's mother and siblings were in Virginia on vacation, so it was really just Bruce Jr. and Robin at the house. Earlier that day, Bruce Jr. had told Robin he had a change of heart about the witness protection program, and he thought it was a good idea after all. The following day, he was planning to contact law enforcement to let them know he was on board.
Yeah, so he's thought about it. It's probably the safest thing for him and her. And yeah, he's probably right.
When they parked in front of the Miller house, Robin turned on the interior light of the vehicle because she was trying to gather up her belongings. You know how we girls do. We got all sorts of shit.
I'm glad you said it.
I know, Dylan always plays the game, What's in Heather's Purse?
Yeah.
Because you never know. So she's like gathering up all of her stuff, and he'd bought her like this brand new purse while they were at the theme park. So she's just making sure she's got all her stuff in there. And Bruce Jr. had, opened his car door, about to step out when gunshots ring out. Bruce Jr. is shot in the chest, the back, arm, torso, and head. And the shots were in rapid succession.
Oh my God.
He staggered around outside, and then he fell back inside the car. He yells at Robin Miller, "Get down!" But she was hit in the chin. So the 15-year-old girl ran into the house screaming.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's no telling how you're going to react in some crazy situation like that.
Bruce Jr. managed to crawl into the house and call police around 12:45 a.m. But Robin Miller was dead.
So he's shot like
8 times.
He's shot 8 times. She took at least 1 round, maybe more. And he's still alive.
Yes.
Wow.
Bruce Jr. was rushed to the hospital where he was treated and managed to survive 8 gunshot wounds.
Man, he's like 50 cents.
He totally 50 cents.
Yeah, but he's 50 cents. Oh.
Investigators began a search of the Miller farm. They found 38 caliber projectiles and wad cutters, which are mostly used for target shooting. They found those in the cornfield. And wad cutters are less powerful, but can still cause pretty serious bodily damage.
Well, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, they're a little softer. Maybe they have less powder. I don't know.
Yeah, but they can still...
They're a little cheaper, maybe, is why they're for target practice.
Put a fucking hurting on you.
Well, I don't want to be shot with any bullet.
No. Inside the house, the police found a total of 131 letters exchanged between Bruce Jr. and Robin Miller. They were in love.
That's a lot of letters.
With Miller's murder, federal, state, and local agencies unleashed a full force against the Johnstons. A former gang member named Jimmy Griffin said after they shot Robin Miller, they knew they'd screwed up.
Well, yeah, you just killed... You killed an innocent 15-year-old girl.
Bystander.
Right.
When he recovered, Bruce Jr. was placed into witness protection in Wisconsin. This was not only due to the attack, but because he was, while he was in the hospital, someone tried to force the locks open in an effort to get to him, even though he had been placed under 24-hour police protection.
Well, where's the cop?
I know, right?
Damn it.
And I couldn't get more details about how, if they were trying to come through a window or how that worked. But someone was trying to break in the hospital to get to it.
So some kind of an attempt was made.
Well, and even if there was a cop, Dylan, these fuckers don't care. They damn shoot cops.
That's true. Or these guys will scale the outside of the damn building or rappel from the roof and try to come in the window.
They'll dress up and look like Daryl Hannah in a nurse's uniform and go in the hospital to assassinate him or Uma or whoever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn, assassinate me.
Can I just say, women with eye patches are really fucking hot.
It's true.
I have, a weird thing for that.
I think eye patches are pretty hot, period.
They are. I think dudes with eye patches are pretty sexy, too.
Yeah.
I'll take both genders and eye patches.
Do you want me to get an eye patch?
I want you to just get a fucking bag for your face.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. Go away.
Baby. I'm sexy right now.
This fever is getting to me.
Ooh.
So when Bruce Jr.'s grandmother, Harriet Steffi, and her daughter Kathy were interviewed on August 30th, they recalled that Bruce Sr. had phoned several times a day for at least a week leading up to the shooting. Rumors were floating around town that Bruce Sr. was going to have his son killed. And when Harriet confronted him about putting a hit out on his own kid, Bruce Sr. denied this accusation, saying he was trying to protect his son from some bad people in Florida.
He's a damn lie.
He then proceeded to stop by her house several times, seeking out Bruce Jr. She told law enforcement that she felt Bruce Sr. was definitely behind the shooting. No doubt in her mind. Jimmy Johnston, Bruce's half-brother, Bruce Jr.'s half-brother. So this is Bruce Sr.'s son as well. Different mama, but still his son. He was supposed to appear before the grand jury, but he hadn't been seen for at least a week before the shooting of Robin Miller. Law enforcement were told that he was staying somewhere in Delaware with James and Wayne Sampson and the guy Dwayne Lincoln at some motel off of Route 40. Now, more searches of the Miller property turned up evidence. About 100 yards south of the farmhouse, they had found a broken piece of plastic with Pontiac on it, and it belonged to a 73 or 75 Bonneville. They found 5 Winston cigarette butts, along with 2 sets of footprints, and there were also some tire impressions found. The foot impressions were near a mushroom-growing house on the Miller property. And by the way, I'm just going to mention there were a lot of mushroom farms in that area.
Oh, okay.
So they're not the kind of fun mushrooms you're thinking about.
No, these are like edible mushrooms.
I know where your mind is going.
I didn't think that.
Yeah, these are like some mushrooms you're going to throw in your paschetti.
So it's like a crop.
Yeah.
Well, I guess they're all crops. These are not good distinctions I'm making here.
So investigators started to believe that maybe the assassins could have hidden out in this mushroom house while they were waiting for Bruce and Robin. One of the top suspects in the shooting was an associate of the Johnston Gang, often ran with them. His name was Leslie Dale. He couldn't be located. Another criminal named Walter Rout from Florida told police that Leslie Dale had been staying at the White Horse Inn and he'd been at Labiac's bar. He already checked out of the motel when law enforcement showed up there, but they were able to follow him as he left the bar. And when they stopped him, Dale was taken into custody for questioning. So during his interview, Dale first asks for immunity. He then says he was stealing a tractor at the time of the murder, and that's why he wanted immunity. He had a wound on his arm, investigators noted, and Dale would claim it was made by barbed wire that he cut himself during the tractor theft. But law enforcement had another theory, that the injury was due to crossfire from a bullet his partner discharged during the Miller murder.
Oh, it's a pretty good theory.
He then told investigators that he was at a restaurant at the time of the shooting. So with his ever-changing story, Dale started to clam up and then demanded a lawyer. Another gang member who had been eluding police was named Ricky Mitchell. Now, after the shooting in the early morning hours, Mitchell called his 19-year-old daughter, Sandy West, who lived in Delaware County. Mitchell said he was drunk and needed a place to crash. So he shows up at West's apartment and ends up staying for 2 days. After the second day, he asked his daughter for a chisel or an ice pick because he had locked his keys in the car.
Yeah, hey, you got a sharp instrument around here so I can get my keys out?
Sandy refuses to help him, and she's like, bud, it's time for you to leave. Dad, you got to hit the road. He grabs her by the throat, hitting her several times in the face, then threatens to kill her. So Sandy immediately calls police, and her father leaves her apartment. So when police were hounding Mitchell's parents, trying to figure out where he was, they phoned Carol Johnston, who was Bruce Sr.'s wife, asking, hey, do you know where Bruce Sr. is? Do you know where this guy Mitchell is? And she says, although she and Bruce Sr. are married and they own a home together, he often stayed at a Howard Johnson in Newark, Delaware. This was like a normal thing, that he just camped out at the motel.
Well, that seems not normal.
No. His wife said that's where he would likely be. She didn't know where Mitchell was, but pretty soon they figure out that he'd been at his daughter's house. Well, the Johnston gang usually met at Ma Johnston's when they were discussing their business or their criminal exploits. When police showed up at her house to question her, Louise and her son David told police that Bruce Jr. was in trouble with some drug dealers from Florida. There was a $400,000 dope deal that had gone wrong, and 4 men were after him. Louise said her son Bruce Sr. loved his boy and would never harm a hair on that boy's head, Dylan.
So they've concocted a story, and they're all on the same page. And that's who attacked him. That's who shot him.
It's dope dealers from Florida.
It's these dope dealers. I'm not sure that they're white.
Dope dealers now
From Florida.
from Florida. Yeah, so these Floridian dope dealers. And that the only reason that he had been trying to track Bruce Jr. down was merely to protect his son. He was going to hide him from those Florida drug dealers because they wanted him dead.
It makes total sense.
Absolutely. I'm sold. Now, during the investigation, Robin Miller's best friend, a girl named Laura Wilson, was interviewed, and she said that both Bruce Jr. and Robin had been paranoid in the days before the shooting. Robin was convinced someone had been watching them. She even told Wilson that someone had called the house several times, threatening her life. Oh, I thought you were going to say something.
I'm sorry, my brain stopped working.
Robin Miller was laid to rest on September 2nd of 1978. Efforts to locate the 4 Kitty Gang members was unsuccessful, so police began to presume they were dead too. During the course of trying to track down the gang members, a guy from Maryland named Kenny Howell had a stolen bulldozer buried in his yard.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's not weird.
His buddy Gary Crouch, a known associate who had testified at the grand jury hearing, was considered dead as well. Investigators found out that Crouch had violated the Johnston sacred law of snitching. Get this. Gary Crouch had recorded years of phone conversations.
Really?
Between himself and the various Johnston gang members.
Okay.
After he testified before this grand jury, poof, gone, vanished.
Damn it. They need
to disappeared.
Put these witnesses in jail or something until I get done using them.
His body was found in Stottsville, buried under some logs. He was only identified by a ring that he wore. Crouch had been shot in the back of the head.
These guys don't give a damn. They will kill everybody.
They will kill every motherfucker in there. They don't care. Now, eventually, Leslie Dale told police that Norman Johnston had admitted to taking part in the ambush along with his brother David, the one that wounded Bruce Jr. and killed Robin Miller. When Ricky Mitchell was finally located, he said that Bruce Sr. ordered him to help kill the Kitty Gang. Now, after Bruce Jr. agreed to testify against his father, the other members of the Kitty Gang were subpoenaed. Bruce Sr. needed to silence the potential informants. So the 3 young men were taken to south of Chad's Ford, to this isolated field off Cosart Road, where they were told to dig their own graves, and then they were executed. A receipt was found showing the purchase of lime on August the 17th, which is the day the gang was executed.
Oh my God.
So he executes not only these gang members, but his own son, Bruce Sr.
Yeah,
because Jimmy Johnston, half-brother of Bruce Jr., murdered by his own father.
Yeah, this guy's a maniac.
Can you believe, just what the fuck?
And the other guys in the crew are maniacs too, because they're going along with all this. They think this is a good idea, the only way they can stay safe.
Now, what's really interesting about Cosarts Road is it has its own kind of creepy history that we're going to get into at the end of the podcast, so I can't wait to talk about it. It's spooky. Bruce Jr. testified against his father and uncles. Bruce Sr. was convicted of the murders of Gary Crouch, his son, James Johnston, Jimmy Johnston, James Sampson, Robin Miller, Wayne Sampson, and Dwayne Lincoln, and the attempted murder of Bruce Jr. So he was given 6 life sentences.
Well, that sounds appropriate.
And Bruce Sr. died in prison August of 2002 from some type of, natural illness or something.
He should have been sentenced to death.
I agree. In 1987, the brothers attempted to seek a new trial under grounds that one of the witnesses, James Griffin, had been granted immunity. David Johnston is serving his sentence in Greene, Pennsylvania. Norman is in Camp Hill, Pennsylvania. In 1999, Norman escaped from prison and was featured on America's Most Wanted. When he escaped, Bruce Sr. and David were moved into solitary confinement.
Oh, damn. They was worried they had some kind of coordinated plan again?
Yeah.
Wow.
Totally. Now, Cosart Road, the location of the Kitty Gang murders, is also known as Devil's Road or Colt Road in Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah. We'll get into that in a moment. The movie The Village was filmed there in that area.
Okay.
So just to give you a reference, if you've seen The Village, you want to go back and rewatch, that's the area where these men were killed. It has a pretty unique story in itself. So there is a home, a mansion, many say, that was owned by a member of the very wealthy DuPont family. And according to local lore, the DuPont family lived there, and they didn't want their wealth to leave the family, so they married relatives.
Oh, so it's like royalty, kind of.
And eventually the children were suffering from deformities. Others say the home was the site of cult worship, including Satanists.
Ooh.
Supposedly, the window panes on the home are shaped as inverted crosses, and the trees grow in strange, crooked fashion, like away from the road, and it like makes this weird skull shape, like when you look down the road.
You've shown me those pictures, and it's very, very creepy.
Yeah, you guys can hit up your internet machine, go over to that there old Google, and look it up. It's crazy looking. Crazy looking, Dylan.
Can you imagine being wealthy and being so obsessed with your wealth that you would inbreed your own family to the point where you have health problems?
No.
What the hell is wrong with some people? You got all this money. You're good, comfortable. I mean, what the hell? How can you be so obsessed with your money?
Well, Dylan, I have two answers to this question, even though I believe it's probably more of a rhetorical question. One is you can't buy class, and two is you can't buy sense.
That's true.
Okay, so money don't buy class, and it don't buy you fucking common
They
sense.
say it can't buy you love either, but I don't know if I believe that.
I love shoes, and if I had money, I would be totally alone with my shoes.
And they say it can't buy you happiness. I don't know, but that's true either.
So, yeah, I'd be pretty fucking happy if I had a lot of money.
Because if I could buy a big, nice house in downtown Savannah for about $400,000 and a fresh, new Nissan Titan, I'd be pretty happy.
Okay, guys, so what we need to do is you need to get 400,000 friends together, and you all donate $1 to us.
That's a really good idea.
Right? We just need 400,000 people to donate $1.
Dude, I want to start a club where everybody gives $1 a week, and like somebody in the club gets the money.
Like half the money or the whole money?
All the money.
Well, I would do. Why not do it more like a 50-50? So then you get to keep some of the money since it was your idea.
All 50s going to the house?
And you organized it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
it's
right.
like a fundraiser.
Shit.
It's fundraising for me to buy a house in Savannah. Okay. So Bruce Jr. survived 8 gunshot wounds and testified against his family. He later had brushes with the law and mostly related to drugs. Now, the Johnston Gang is still known as one of the most dangerous and highly organized criminal enterprises in the United States. Police recovered more than 200 tractors during the course of the investigation. More John Deere tractors were stolen in the 3-state area of Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Maryland than the rest of the United States. Some victims had tractors stolen multiple times. A stolen tractor would yield insurance money for a farmer to buy another, and then it would be stolen. So the Johnstons operated on a cycle. The disturbing fact about the Johnstons is probably the brutality in which they operated. They were willing to kill members of their own family to protect themselves.
Yeah, I think that's totally their scariest element of them, the gang.
Now, I highly recommend, if you enjoyed today's story and you would like to know more, checking out the movie At Close Range. It's from the 1980s, and it stars Sean Penn and Christopher Walken, and he is excellent in it, as always.
Yes, that's a very good movie, and they actually lay this story out pretty true to fact.
Yeah, it's great. It's got Mary Stuart Masterson as Robin. Chris Penn plays Sean Penn's brother, Jimmy Johnston.
Which is funny because they look like brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, if you want to know my resources for today, you can check out the book, Jailing the Johnston Gang by Bruce Mauday. It's really interesting. It's written from law enforcement perspective, so it's got a lot of detail about the criminal investigation, which I didn't go into too much of that, but is definitely a book that if you're interested in investigative work and how the different agencies work together, this book is chock full of how they approached this, interviewing people, like all those details.
So very procedural.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. And also there are a lot of newspaper articles from that time that I used as well. So that has been our story on the Johnston Gang.
Man, those guys were off the rails.
Yeah, I thought it was an interesting story because we haven't really focused too much on like an organized crime family, so to speak.
It's true.
We've talked about the Brooks family, but let's face it, they were just a bunch of morons.
Yeah.
And of course, we had our previous Mountain Murders episode on like the cocaine cowboys from Kentucky.
Yeah, and we had the State Line Mafia, but they were kind of not so much family, just a bunch of, misfits working together.
Bunch of gangsters.
Gangstas.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's just a crazy story.
It really is. And like I said, check out that movie at close range. I think we rented it maybe from Amazon Prime.
Yes, it was on Prime.
Yeah, I think so. But I liked it. I thought it was pretty good.
I thought it was great.
Yeah, so check that out. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Mountain Murders. Again, we apologize that we are a little late, but hopefully we will survive the COVID, and we do have an offbeat plans. Maybe we'll be able to drop that here in the next day or so, and we have another great episode coming out on Sunday.